What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to episode 12 of Lobbing Scorchers. This is Ari Lillianwall. I got producer Noah here with me. Noah, say what's up to the people.
Ari, you need to make a correction. You need to make a correction to a correction.
I do. I do. We're gonna hit the correction segment to start the show first, but we've got an unfortunate pod here for you all today. We had a double dub pod on the last episode, and we had a great time with it. But we got a double L pod today, Noah. Double L pod.
It's a tough week to be a Seattle soccer fan.
Yep. Last week was a tough week to be a Canadian, but you know that got turned around real quick in short order. So we're gonna have to dive into all that. We've got a U.S. men's national team L in the Gold Cup. We're no longer in the Gold Cup. It's a very sad day. I'm pretty busted up about it.
U.S. men's national team Twitter is going crazy against Christian Roldan.
They're not handling it all well, so we're going to talk about that. And then we got a Seattle Sounders L midweek at San Jose, 2-0. So we're going to have to dive in and break down both of those L's, unfortunately. But we don't shy away from L's here. We don't. We take every result head on, regardless of what it is.
Correct.
So we're gonna dive into both of those L's and then hit some quick hitters. I think from around MLS at the end. So let's get into it. But before we jump in, like Noah said, I got a couple corrections for the correction segment here. Actually, Noah hates the correction segment. He says I should just double down and never correct anything. But I disagree. You know, I always want to be accurate. So
yeah. You don't want to be a Seattle Times columnist.
Oh boy,
we were lobbing scorchers, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna hit both of these corrections real quick. The first one is a pretty small one. On the last show, when I was talking about the handball that the Vancouver Whitecaps may or may not have committed, I called Luis Martins Felipe Martins, so just the wrong name there. To be fair, Felipe Martins did play for the Whitecaps at one point.
True.
Doesn't anymore. Now he's on Orlando City FC, but got that name wrong there. Noticed that one. Was like, God damn it, that's not the right guy. But,
apologies to him.
Apologies
and
to
his
Luis
family.
Martins. It's Felipe Martins for the it's Luis Martins for the Vancouver
Correct.
Whitecaps. Felipe Martins for Orlando City FC.
Yes.
The other one is a pretty funny one. I corrected on a previous show my pronunciation of Christian Pulisic's name. And Christian Pulisic just transferred to AC Milan, and apparently he told Italian media that it actually is pronounced Christian Pulisic, which is how I had been pronouncing it, and I corrected it from that. So I had it right, I guess. I'm correcting the correction. I don't really know what to call him at this point. I don't know if it's Pulisic for Italian media and Pulisic for all of us. I might just go back to Pulisic because that's how I had been saying it. And he said that that's how you say it, which is like the Croatian pronunciation of the name. So
I just call him Christian, not Roldan.
That's fair. Anyway, we'll see how we handle Christian's name moving forward. That'll be a storyline for
It's
you
a point
all
of contention
to
on
keep
this
an eye
pod,
on.
you know?
But, you know, that's a good segue. I'm going to start this show cooking on some U.S. men's national team Gold Cup takes. You know, ordinarily I'd probably lead with the Sounders, but, you know, here's my condition. The Seattle Sounders can always guarantee themselves a spot leading this show if they score multiple goals in whatever game that they played. They got shut out in this game, so, you know, they get the second half of the show. Multiple goals is my condition, and they'll always lead. But they couldn't do that this week. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to dive into some Gold Cup takes to start it off here. Not really looking forward to it, but like I said, you know, I don't shy away from the results. So we're going to talk about this Gold Cup L. Just all around unfortunate. Everyone's pissed off. But let's get into it.
I'm not pissed off.
Yeah, no, I'm chilling. I'm fine.
I'm actually really happy.
My day went pretty much normally. Yeah, it's actually a dub for Seattle that
Correct.
The U.S. got eliminated because now Jordan and Christian come back. But,
Christian wanted to come home.
Yeah.
He did. He saw the struggles that the Seattle Sounders had, and he said, it's time for me to come home.
Let me just start by telling you all how I feel about the Gold Cup, because we've talked a lot about how much we don't care about the Gold Cup on this show. And I don't say that to disparage the Gold Cup for all the Gold Cup enthusiasts out there. I think the Gold Cup is fine. But for me personally, I have a lot of other stuff in my life that I need to expend emotional energy on before I can really get up a lot of juice for the Gold Cup. So for as blazing hot as the discourse on the timeline has been regarding this Gold Cup L over the last 48 hours or so, and it's been blazing hot, I can just tell you how I look at the Gold Cup, okay? And the first thing you need to understand about the Gold Cup, and I tried to explain this on the last show, but USMNT Twitter clearly doesn't listen to this show, unfortunately, because they haven't been heeding what I said at all. But this was a situation where we had two tournaments in highly close proximity to one another, schedule-wise. We played in Concacaf Nations League, which we won, famously. And then 6 days later, we had the Gold Cup. So, with that in mind, we couldn't just call in the exact same team for the Gold Cup as we did in Nations League. Couldn't do it. Doesn't make sense. These guys already play 127 games a year between their club teams, playing their league seasons and 14 different tournaments at the same time on top of their international games. They just won that tournament that they played in, famously. And on top of that, you don't really need to evaluate anything among that group of players who are the top players in the pool and most of whom are known commodities at this point. Nothing to learn. So, with that in mind, made way more sense to use this tournament as an opportunity to evaluate a lot of players who there is more to know about and just see what you have. Give them an opportunity to show what they can do, compete to show that they can contribute to the first choice team. Guys like Brandon Vasquez fall into that category. Georgi Mihailovic, Cade Cowell, Jalen Neal, DeJuan Jones. Jesus Ferreira has more caps than those guys, but he falls into that category, believe it or not. He gets talked about like a known commodity where we already know for a fact that he's hit his ceiling as a player, but that's not the case. Anyone who says that they know that Jesus Ferreira has already hit his ceiling as a player and doesn't have any more possible upside is lying to you. They don't know that. I could go on with the list of names, but not every player that got called in for the Gold Cup falls into that category. They mixed it up between those younger and more inexperienced guys and supplemented it with some more familiar faces. I would imagine the logic being, you're also trying to win. If you throw out a team that's entirely the U23 squad, realistically, it would be fun. I would like to see that, but a team that inexperienced is not going to be ready for the smoke of a CONCACAF tournament. So the other portion of this squad were more familiar faces, few MLS guys that are more role players within the program to fill out the roster. Guys like Miles Robinson, who's not really a role player, but more experienced guy. DeAndre Yedlin, Aaron Long, Christian Roldan, and Jordan Morris. Matt Turner stayed in goal for this tournament. And, I don't even necessarily agree with all the names that got called in that vein. There's probably a couple names where I feel like we have probably seen enough, and I would rather have seen the roster spot go to a more unknown commodity. But, the difference is I'm not going to throw a temper tantrum about that. I don't really care if Aaron Long gets called in for the Gold Cup. Sorry. I don't. I wouldn't have called in Matt Turner for this. I would have put Gaga in there and let it rip. But, I would say there were enough unknown commodities to keep me mildly interested in how some of them would do. Vasquez and Ferreira, that was something I was watching. Who's going to win the backup 9 sweepstakes that people care about way too much, but sort of matters. Cade Cowell, I think, is becoming a pretty intriguing one. He was one where I looked at it as if he goes out and has a dominant Gold Cup, I could get talked into that as a significant storyline. On the defensive side, Brian Reynolds and Jalen Neal are two players that haven't gotten many caps and who I haven't seen play a lot, but who I've been told by the pundits and analysts are generational talents, apparently. Those are two where if they performed well, I might consider it significant. Georgi Mihailovic, that's one I have some degree of investment in. He went from MLS to the Eredivisie, so he's allowed to be part of the program without slander now, and I wanted to see something from him. I'm going to start calling out the bots here. When you guys hype up a guy like Brian Reynolds or Georgi Mihailovic because they play in Europe, and talking about how much they deserve caps over guys like DeAndre Yedlin or Kellen Acosta or whoever it is, I'm going to start asking where the substance is. It's time someone did ask the bots about some of these guys. I've heard a lot about how it's a national disgrace that Brian Reynolds didn't get called in or didn't get minutes over DeAndre Yedlin over about 158 times over the last 2 years, or however long it's been since he left FC Dallas, because he plays in Italy and that automatically means that he's at this higher level. Okay, the Gold Cup's here. This is his chance to prove the bots correct. Show they know what they're talking about when they make their evaluations. He plays in Italy. He should be able to show out at this tournament. And this is kind of a tangent, but I'm going to go on it. I'll tell you what I saw from Brian Reynolds, and I don't say this to sandbag the player or write him off. I think he's clearly a talented attacking player, and I would never write off a player over one or two bad games. And I'm honestly down to give Brian Reynolds more caps and show that he can actually hang. He's got some skills in attack. But I got to be honest, what I saw in the Gold Cup wasn't that good. It wasn't that good. He got cooked on by Jacob Schaufelberg pretty mercilessly. Jacob Schaufelberg looked like the next Alphonso Davies going against Brian Reynolds. It was absolutely electric. And I'm not trying to... I'm just telling you what I saw. I saw Jacob Schaufelberg out there cooking with diesel fuel. I haven't seen a Canadian cooking with that much gas since Wayne Gretzky on the Edmonton Oilers in the 1990s. I don't know what you all saw, but that's what I saw. So, anyway, the point is, this is that type of roster for this tournament. It's not our first choice players. It's more developmental players, prospects, or young guys that we're trying to either evaluate or give a chance to keep improving at this level, and role players, guys who theoretically have more experience, keep the ship steady, and ideally help compete to win the tournament. That's the type of roster that this was. So with that in mind, I personally don't really give a flying fuck if we win or lose the Gold Cup. I don't. Sorry. I know that's a controversial take. From looking at the timeline, you would think that winning the Concacaf Gold Cup is the most sought-after trophy of any federation on earth. A lot of people apparently really love the Gold Cup. But for me, it's like this. Given that I'm mostly invested in the tournament for the development of specific players, I'm personally less concerned with winning it than I am at how individual players perform, if that makes sense. If we lose the tournament, but Cade Cowell has like 8 goals and is creating a bunch of dangerous chances, and these CONCACAF defenses look like they can't handle him, I would be pretty happy. He didn't do that, but Cade Cowell had a pretty good tournament. I was happy to see that. You know, if Brandon Vasquez scores a bunch of goals, which he scored 2, I'd be pretty happy. If Jesus Ferreira scores a bunch of goals, which he did, he scored 7, I'll take that. 7 goals, including a stoppage time equalizer in the semifinals. That was one of the best goals that any player scored for any team in this tournament. That's sick.
Assist by JMO.
Assisted by JMO. So,
but they don't count.
I'll take that. Jesus Ferreira, 6 of his goals don't count. You're right. But you know, I don't know why I would root against Jesus Ferreira scoring a bunch of goals, given our striker depth, which is still not great. So that's just more of the stuff I'm looking at. I really don't care that we lost to Panama in penalties. Sorry. I just can't get the juice for this one. The USMNT plays in a lot of tournaments that I do care about winning. They played in the World Cup. I cared about those games. Nations League had all our best players, and the team looked amazing, so I cared about those. But this is more about the individual performances of players that I don't know about and want to see play more. The only sense that I really care about the results is, number one, that we don't do anything actually embarrassing, like not make it out of the group or crash out in the quarterfinals, and basically just make it far enough that we get an actual extended look at the players. So the semifinals or the final, that's fine. We can make it to either of those points, really, and then I'm good on the Gold Cup. We can call it a day on the Gold Cup. All right?
I'm looking forward to Copa America. That's the only big tournament of like coming up that I actually give a shit about.
That'll be an important one. You'll see the A squad in that tournament. It matters. It matters if we win that, for sure. I I can just tell you about Jesus Ferreira and Christian Roldan because those are the two players that have taken the most vitriol since we lost because they missed their penalties. So if you've been keeping cursory track of all this and haven't really been dialed in, I can just give you context on that and why it's so dumb that both these players have become such polarizing punching bags among the fan base. If you're wondering how Jesus Ferreira actually played in this tournament, Jesus Ferreira played really well in this tournament. He scored 7 goals, led the team. Like you mentioned, Noah, there was a lot of talk about how 6 of those goals don't count because they came against countries that people don't deem worthy of playing international soccer. That's not true. Those goals do count. When we're playing countries where we have a supreme talent advantage, we need players who will go out and bury them. The USMNT hasn't always done that. You can go throughout our history and find games where we've blown results against teams that we should have buried. It's a dark history. It happened in 2018, famously. I don't know if you all remember that one. We lost to Trinidad and Tobago in a game where we had a supreme talent advantage and needed to be able to bury them. And we didn't. Missed the World Cup because of that. So if Jesus Ferreira's only role on this team is just the guy who goes out there and absolutely torches overmatched opposition, that's a useful role. I don't need Balogun starting in those games necessarily. If we have a guy who can reliably take care of business and pile up goals in those games, I'll take that. There's a role for that. But here's the thing. We don't even know if that's Jesus Ferreira's only role on this team. We don't know. People act like they know, but they don't know that. Jesus Ferreira is 22. He's been pro for a long time now, so he gets talked about like he's 28, but he's 22. And he's probably going to go to Europe at some point, and I think he should. And if he goes over there and does well and keeps getting called in and takes another leap in his development at the international level, which is still possible, there's for sure a possibility where he could be a player that contributes to the first choice squad or in big games, whether that's as a spark plug coming off the bench or, you know, if he takes a really big leap, maybe as a starter in some cases. We don't know. And on top of that, he did not only score against these quote unquote minnows in the Gold Cup. I hate the term minnows. I'm gonna just stop using that. I don't like that, but I'm gonna use it in this case because that's the terminology that all the bots are using. So that narrative doesn't even apply in this case. It doesn't. In the semifinals, we were playing a Panama team that was actually pretty good. Them and Jamaica were the best teams that we played. Jesus Ferreira scored a huge goal against Panama. He almost won us the game. So it's not his fault that we lost because he missed the penalty. The fuck do you think we were even in penalties to begin with? It's because Jesus Ferreira scored a goal. Okay? He's the only reason that we had a chance to win the game. Him and Jordan Morris. You want to talk about Brian Reynolds and Georgi Mihailovic? Give me those sales pitches. You know, what did they do to help us win that game when it was really on the line? Jesus Ferreira and Jordan Morris were the ones who bailed us out. So I hate to point that out, but that's just the facts. Christian Roldan also missed his penalty, which is just highly unfortunate on multiple levels. Number one, because he actually played well in the game. I thought he looked pretty good. We didn't get any goals off the danger he created, but he was part of a couple of good-looking sequences, and he put in some good service. I thought he played pretty well, but look, I gave my spiel on Christian's place within the national team on the last show, so I don't want to rehash it too much and repeat myself. But just to make it clear, the hate he gets is idiotic and just way, way over the top and melodramatic. Christian's had 2 years where he really got a lot of caps with the national team. He had double-digit caps in 2019 and 2021. Aside from that, he's never had more than 4 caps in a calendar year. He was one of the last guys on the roster for the World Cup. Barely played at the World Cup. I don't know if he played at the World Cup at all. I don't remember, but if he did, it was not a significant amount whatsoever. He's never been given a defined role or position, has made his appearances in spot duty at the end of games off the bench, and mostly been a role player for this team. Okay, he doesn't play all that much. So anyone who gets called in over him instead of him would also be a role player. That's what people don't really acknowledge. You could say you want to see that roster spot go to a younger player, but the reality is those roster spots pretty much all go to fringe role type of players by definition who probably aren't going to play all that much. There are guys like that on every roster, both club and international. That's how a depth chart works. So if you're the type of person who hates on role players and backups, lamest type of fan there is. Boring, lazy, put me to sleep. It's something that you do when you try to make it seem like you're super smart and know what you're talking about, but you actually don't. So congratulations.
They're couch posters, Ari.
Couch posters, keyboard warriors, whatever term you want to use. If you're the type of fan who personally attacks players for missing penalties, you're also the lamest type of fan.
Get your ass out there. I want to see you smoke that.
Take one from the spot.
Let's go. Yeah, against a CONCACAF keeper, because you can say what you want, but all those players are professional soccer players.
Panama is a pretty good squad. I was impressed with what I saw from them in that game. You know, they're a middle of the pack CONCACAF team. They made the World Cup in 2018 and we didn't. Yep. Shout out Ramon Torres. So
correct.
It's not like we have all that much of a right to be saying that we should be swamping on them. There's no rhyme or reason to penalties. It's as random as it gets. It's a guessing game. If you're a fan of this game long enough, players on teams that you support are going to miss penalties. So when a player on a team that you're a fan of does miss a penalty, the correct response is to go, damn, he missed it. We lost. Unfortunate. We'll get him next time, hopefully. Any other response that involves anger or vitriol directed at the player is just coming in way too hot, and you're weird and honestly a little creepy if you do that stuff. So it's not Christian Roldan's fault that we lost the game. It's not Jesus Ferreira's fault that we lost the game. And that's pretty much all I have to say about the Gold Cup. That'll do it for Gold Cup coverage, fortunately. I'm going to move on and never think about the Gold Cup again, Noah. And
I think that's a good idea.
I hope you all will do the same. So sorry if that was a negative segment, but it was a tough L and the discourse has been blazing hot. So to take the temperature down a little bit, we're going to move on and cover a team that generated no controversy or negative storylines over the past 48 hours and where everything is fine and chill. The Seattle Sounders, who are coming off a really fantastic game that was super fun to watch and didn't get anyone mad. So looking forward to diving into this.
But Ari, they're number 3 in the MLS power rankings.
They were after the Vancouver game, which was pretty funny, and they're also still number 3 on the Western Conference table. So I guess you can take solace in that, but it was a 2-0 loss for the Seattle Sounders at the San Jose Earthquakes at PayPal Park on Wednesday. Loans not repaid.
Nope.
Christian Espinoza scored on a penalty kick 20 minutes into the game. Miguel Chaco scored one of the best goals I've ever seen, and that was a wrap. Seattle fell from 2nd to 3rd in the Western Conference with the defeat, and the same questions we've been asking over the past 8 or so weeks just resurfaced once again after the big win in Vancouver. The vibes got tanked, but they're not chalk, so we're going to talk about all that as this double L pod churns onward, unfortunately. I raised my eyebrows before this game even kicked off, about an hour before, to be exact, when I saw the lineup. On the preview show, I predicted that this game would necessitate a lot of squad rotation, given that they just played in Vancouver on Saturday and that this was their second match of a 2-game road trip being played midweek on short rest. I was making all kinds of outlandish predictions about the lineup, Noah. I was predicting Josh Atencio was going to start.
Yeah.
I was dropping some absolute names. I think I said Dylan Tevez. I said A.B. Sissoko. I was dropping names. And instead, they rolled out a starting 11 that had 2 changes. Hebert for Rui Diaz and Cody Baker for Alex Roldan, and the rest of it was the exact same. No rotation at all. So, needless to say, the game that did not pay off, Seattle generated absolutely nothing on offense after they conceded the penalty. I thought the first 20 minutes up until the penalty were actually playing out fine. I thought
they were dominating for sure.
They were pretty good in possession. Hebert had a great chance. He had a shot saved, unfortunately. So
don't worry, guys.
No breakout for Hebert.
His big chances created. They're up to 12 now.
Yeah, okay.
He's still leading the league.
Okay, they were hanging with it, but then they conceded another soft goal in the first half for a second straight game. They did the same thing in Vancouver, and they got away with it. And they came back and won that game, but they did it again in this game. And this time, you didn't get away with it, and you can't do that. You can't keep doing that. If you get bammed on by a highlight reel goal like Traco hit later in the game, or they slice and dice you on a counter or with some intricate interplay or something like that, that's one thing. But conceding a penalty right there in that situation, can't do it. Puts you behind the 8 ball and you have no margin for error. The margins for this team are too thin right now to be conceding goals like that and to still be able to expect to have a chance at taking a result on short rest midweek on the road. Seattle never really bounced back after the penalty. Alex rolled on and Rui Diaz subbed on in the second half, but they never scored. They ended up with something like 0.6 whatever XG. My eye test didn't tell me that they were anything more dangerous than that. Traco's goal was insane. I mean, you can't really do anything about that except tip your cap, but it ended up being an insurance goal anyway because Seattle couldn't score. And, I'm going to be critical of Schmetz right here. I'm going to be critical of Schmetz. All right. I don't know if Schmetz listens to Lobbing Scorchers. I doubt it. But, I know Schmetz well. Reasonable people can disagree. And I know he knows ball more than I ever will. And he also knows the health and physical capabilities of his players much better than I do. But that being said, I just disagree with the lineup. It's not how I would have lined it up. If I was the coach, which I'm not, but if I was, I just think you have to rotate right here. You have to. It's no fun. No one likes to do it. Guys don't want to sit out. I get that. I'm sure that's something he was also dealing with too. But in MLS, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and fire out the novelty lineup and just let it rip. Can't play the same starting 11 for a 3-game week. I mean, you can, but a lot of the times the result is going to be a performance that is heavy-legged and lethargic. And that's what it looked like happened to me, to my eye, in this game after the penalty. I don't think Nico Ladero should have started in this game. He's the most freakishly fit physical specimen that I've ever seen up close, but at 34 years old, I think you got to just sit him right there. As sharp as he looked against Vancouver, and he looked very sharp, he was equally unsharp in this game. Start Rusnak if you think you have to, but just put Dylan Tevez at right mid and let him cook. That's what I would have done. João Paulo didn't play poorly in this game, but I think you have to sit him right there. The issue is, in this situation, you now have another game coming up on Saturday. So by playing João Paulo in this game, are you going to ride him again on Saturday for the third time in a week? How much is he going to have left for that? I would have sat him and rode the Josh Atencio, Obed Vargas double pivot. Obed is 17. He can play an unlimited number of games. But
correct.
João Paulo is 31, going on 32. I think you sit him right there. That's what I would have done. I would have started A.B. Sissoko for Yeimar. I wouldn't have played Alex Roldan or Rui Diaz at all unless you absolutely had to. To me, that's just the type of game this was. Schmetz said after the game that he felt like the group that won in Vancouver looked good, and he felt like essentially that they earned the chance to build off of that and keep it rolling, which I get. He's not wrong in principle, but I'm just thinking about the big picture of a 3-game week and trying to preserve some energy and freshness so you can come home at FC Dallas on Saturday and have your first choice guys a little more fresh. And now you're in a situation where, do you play Nico Ladero and João Paulo on Saturday, or is that the game now where you rotate? I don't know. This team has not been good on short rest this year. Jeremiah Oshan from Sandra at Heart was dishing a bunch of stats about this, wrote a column about it on Sandra at Heart, which is worth reading. But they're like 0-3-4 now, 0.33 points per game playing on short rest this year. That's the majority of their bad results that they've taken this season right there. So you might still take a bad result with the novelty lineup, but I'm of the mind that sometimes you just have to eat it and do that. That's just how I see it. So there was a handball controversy in this game. The Quakes almost got VAR'd for one around the 80th minute or so, where the guy was trying to chest it, but he had his arms all the way out, flying like a bird, and it looked like the ball bounced off his chest and into his arm. For my money, I don't know if it was clear and obvious that the trajectory of the ball changed due to hitting his hand. I think it looked like it did, but I honestly couldn't really tell.
At that point, did it really matter?
Yeah, either way, even if they had gotten the penalty kick, it wouldn't have mattered, because unless they had somehow scraped out another goal in the remaining 10 minutes, which they didn't look especially close to doing, it's kind of a moot point. So,
as we said last time, don't leave it up to a call from the officials.
Yeah. The good news is that with the U.S. losing, Jordan and Christian come back now, and I honestly do expect that to help the situation. I don't know how much they'll be playing on Saturday. Schmidt said he doesn't know, but I think adding 2 players of that caliber back into the group will elevate the group. And I think at this point, it's just about hoping that them coming back reinvigorates the offense and they can get rolling, because they got to get rolling. They got to get rolling. Leagues Cup is coming up. You got the rest of the season, and you're trying to get a home playoff game. So,
what do you think about Leagues Cup? Do you think they try and just tank it?
No, I mean, they're not going to tank it. I think they're probably going to play roughly first choice lineups for those games. Maybe you see them rotate it early, but no, I think they're going to try and win it. I think everybody wants to win the first game. Anytime you're playing Liga MX competition, you want to show out. You're not punting Leagues Cup. No. The last thing I'll say is, now that this whole stretch without the full team is over and they're going to have the group finally getting back together again, when you have a team that relies way too heavily on one player, you're playing a dangerous game. You're playing a dangerous game. It's fine and it's all well and good to say that, we haven't had Christian here, and when he comes back, it's going to fix a lot, and the offense is going to be firing again. But look at Nashville SC right now. That's the example I would point to. Nashville SC has been riding Hani Mukhtar and only Hani Mukhtar for the past 3 years now. And a lot of the time, it's been phenomenal. He's the best player in the league. When he gets cooking, they look like the 1996 Bulls just because he's that good a player. But the last few weeks, they've been in a bad run of form because Hani Mukhtar isn't blazing hot anymore. Teams are scheming it up to take him out of the game. When he's missed games in the past, they've looked like a shell of themselves. Their level has dropped a lot, just like Seattle's has on offense the last few weeks. So Christian Roldan is going to help. Jordan Morris is going to help. But Christian Roldan cannot play every game. And you've got to be able to take results when he's not playing. To be fair, Seattle did take enough results while he was out to stay afloat on the table. You got to give them credit for that. They did beat the Red Bulls. They did beat the Dynamo. They did beat the Whitecaps. They grinded out a couple of draws. So if you look at the table, they actually managed to keep themselves afloat decently well on the table. But the offense should not have tanked this badly without him. They should have been able to score more goals than this. They should have been able to put themselves up higher towards first place in the West during this last stretch. But thankfully now they're getting the squad back, and we're going to just see how it looks going forward. We've been talking a lot about how much we expect Christian and Jordan, but mostly Christian, honestly. I think that's really what's tanked the offense to me. Leo Chu's been doing what he can, but I think we saw in the San Jose game that he can't just carry the full load every single week, every single minute of every single game. You got to be more multifaceted. You've got to be able to find ways to hurt teams without Christian Roldan on the field, and they couldn't really do that to the degree that they needed to over this last stretch of games. I think it's fair to say that. But like I said, they took enough results to keep themselves right in the thick of it for the number 1 seed in the West, so that's the good thing. You have anything that you wanted to talk about with the San Jose game, Noah, before we talk about Dallas a little bit?
It was, I think you should just throw that one in the bin.
You throw it in the bin.
It just poor performance, bad lineup, should have rotated, would have made it sting a little bit less when we lost. I think we both expected that to be a tough one. And it is what it is.
You were in a tough situation, admittedly. Situation there is you either throw out the novelty lineup, and the novelty lineup, maybe it gets you a result, but I would say it's vastly less likely.
Yep.
I will say that. Or you throw out the first choice lineup on short rest, which is what they did, and you're probably looking at players that are tired, and just it's tough to give your full juice on that shorter rest, especially for
and travel.
In the travel. That was the second straight road game, especially for guys like Nico Ladero who are 34. I know he wants to play every game. I know he does. He's going to say that he can play every game, but I think that game kind of showed that he should not be playing on that short of a turnaround, or if he is, it should be 20-30 minutes off the bench at the end of the game and not starting and trying to carry the full load.
Correct.
So
I also my last point on this. My bet of Abear is not going to score the rest of the season. I think it's going to cash.
I mean, okay, you can take your little victory lap on that. You know, Abear is still not scoring. He missed another big chance in this game. That bet is probably not going to cash. The odds statistically are that he's going to get at least a couple before the end of the season. But it is getting to the point now where you're like, you know, is this just Nelson Valdez? You know, that it's possible that that's the situation. But either way, he's not a bad player. He's putting himself in positions to score goals. The guy just he can't catch a break right now.
He is very
unlucky. He can't
unlucky.
catch a break. So for as much heat as he's taking,
I want him to score. I love the guy.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
it's like a pretty mind-bogglingly unfortunate run.
It's almost like
it is really it is Nelson Valdez tier.
He's committed to the bit for sure.
I mean, it's pretty like when he got that first one saved in San Jose, I was just like, dude, God damn it! Like
his
really
XG
like
is going crazy.
Every single it's 5 minutes into the game and his XG is already off the charts. So I still think he's probably going to get. It would be a mind-boggling statistical outcome if he's just putting up big chances like this every time that he's on the field and none of them go in. That's just really usually not how it works. Like usually the law of averages dictate that a few of those start to go in. It hasn't happened yet. I don't really know what to say about it other than that the dude is about as snake bit as anyone I've seen on this team since Nelson Valdez. So it's just unfortunate. Like realistically, like Rui Diaz is also at an age where he can't play every single week. And he didn't start this game. He was on a minutes restriction. And for the rotated lineup, or the second choice lineup to be successful, Abear's got to be scoring. That's part of what's going to make the formula work. And, the guy can't catch a break. He can't catch a break. So unfortunate. It happened again in this game. When he missed that, I was like,
yeah. I think we all were. We all were.
Heart sank a little bit.
Big game this weekend. Big game at FC Dallas here, but
hosting
against
FC Dallas. Yeah, I'm actually going to miss this game. One of the few Sounders home games that I will ever not be at. My friend's getting married. I'm going to the bachelor party, so I'm not going to be in the city of Seattle. Not too bummed to miss this game, honestly. We'll see how much Christian Jordan play. Schmetz said that's TBD. So, if Christian's out there and cooking at full capacity, maybe it's a more fun game to watch. But I kind of expect them to be more eased back into it. Maybe they'll come off the bench. So I think, if it's not a rotated lineup and Schmetz just rides the same 11 for the third game in a row this week, it'll still be the lineup that hasn't really been scoring that many goals outside of the Vancouver game the last few weeks. But yeah, this is going to be, I think I've missed like 3 Sounders home games since I started this job in 2014.
God damn.
Yeah, I missed one in 2015 when I was covering the Seahawks at the same time, and the Hawks were playing at home at the same time the Sounders were in Houston. So I missed that game. I missed one last year when I had COVID, and I missed another one last year when I was on vacation. But other than that, I've been to every single one, so I'm missing another one. But it's at the point in the season where, I'm actually kind of looking forward to just, I don't think I'm even going to watch the game, Noah. I think I'm just going to catch up on it.
You need me
later
to fill in for you.
Yeah, you can blow
I'll
up
write the monologue.
You can blow up the group chat, write the monologue, and tell me how it goes. I might watch on TV. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how I'm feeling. But either way, I can tell you about FC Dallas a little bit, which, they've been struggling.
They got lots of injuries.
They got a lot of injuries. Jesus Ferreira, who carries most of the load for them on offense, has been at the Gold Cup, and it's probably a similar situation where they might not start him. Maybe they will. I don't know if Nico Estevez is going to look at that differently than Schmetz. But, either way, they are a team where their spot on the table kind of surprises me compared to what their roster looks like. FC Dallas's roster has some fun stuff going on. Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola are really good MLS players. Alan Velasco is a highly touted U22 signing who, I feel like he hasn't really popped as much as you would expect. I'm going to pull up his numbers real quick. But he was a guy who, when he was signed, that was like considered a big signing.
I remember
for the
that,
league.
yeah.
He was considered he's a young player. He's only 20, coming from Argentina. But yeah, he's got 2 goals, 3 assists this year in 1,500 minutes. That's kind of not the production that people were telling me that Alan Velasco was going to provide in MLS.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Brian Reynolds situation. You got everyone talking about how generational a talent we're talking about, and he hasn't really popped yet. He's only 20, so he could still pop. He had 6 goals, 7 assists in closer to 2,000 minutes last year. But I think part of what's going on with them, why their record might not be as good as people anticipated, is that he just hasn't really popped. He hasn't really popped. They're 8-9-5 with a -1 goal differential, 1.32 points per game. So this is a middle of the pack team, basically, is what I'm saying. It's a middle of the pack team. It's a team you should be able to take 3 points against, playing at home, whatever the lineup is. If it's a more novelty lineup because they just played the same lineup 2 games in a row, that team should still be able to at least take a result in this game. So I don't know. I guess hopefully Christian and Jordan both play at least a little bit, and they can start getting worked back into it, and this team can get on a run. We're going to see. I've been giving grace on the fact that, all right, you just have to grind through this stretch without Christian, without Jordan. You also had some injuries in that time too, some suspensions. So I've been saying that you just have to grind through it, wait for him to get back, and then hopefully you can start cooking again. So we're going to see if that was actually the case and if they can do that. I do think that the level is going to raise a lot with Christian and Jordan back in there, but now they got to do that, and it starts on Saturday against FC Dallas. That's probably going to be a work into it type of game for those guys, but it's an opportunity to get back up towards first place in the West. They're still right in it. Despite the loss at San Jose. And
their last 5 games don't look bad though.
FC Dallas?
Seattle. You know what I mean? Like, so are we? That's my bad.
You mean the games that they just played or the games coming up?
The games they just played. Like, it's
no, they beat Houston and they beat Vancouver. Honestly, like if you just look at the results, like, I don't think it's been the worst stretch of games, but I'm someone who looks at performance as well.
Correct.
So like that's kind of more that what I'm talking about is just that, like, they beat the Red Bulls and the Dynamo 1-0. I didn't really see much in either of those games that where I'm like, oh, okay, like they could really cook without Christian on the field, even the Vancouver game, I talked about it a little bit, but like, yeah, they scored 3 goals, but 2 of those were off set pieces, and one of them was when they were up a man.
Yep.
So like, I didn't really look at that game as evidence that they had it all figured out with the lineups that they had been putting out there. So in terms of results, it honestly it wasn't that bad a stretch. You're right.
Yeah.
Like
they took
3 wins and they grinded out a couple draws. So that's fine. But I'm more looking at how they played in the games during that stretch, and I'm going like, I don't really think this team figured out how to play without Christian at all.
You're right.
Really.
So, no, you're right. You're right.
But the fact that they did keep the results afloat is good. Like that's what they had to do. I would have liked to see a couple more draws grinded out and another win, but the results they did take kept them right in the mix for a top 2 seed. So that's the good news. But hey, a win this weekend, that's
38 points. St. Louis on 38 points.
Yeah, so St. Louis lost to LAFC 3-0, hungover LAFC. They got
Fraudulent
bammed on
St.
by
Louis FC.
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't. Yeah. They might be. They're still first in the West, and they've still got a plus 13 goal differential. Their record still looks really good. They're still at 1.73 points per game, 5 road wins. So St. Louis are having a really good season. I don't know if they
lost to Dallas though.
I don't know if they lost to FC Dallas.
Yeah.
And they got absolutely bammed on by LAFC. That game was tight and competitive until the second half, and LAFC got the first one, and what happened was LAFC or St. Louis City was pushing for the equalizer, opened themselves up, and then they instead got bammed on a couple more times. So I don't think that game was as,
every 10 minutes.
Yeah,
they got scored on from the 72nd minute.
Exactly. So I don't think that game was as one-sided as the scoreline, but credit to hungover LAFC. They did not look hungover in that stretch past the 70th minute. So, a top 2 seed is right there for Seattle. It still is. It still is, despite the San Jose game. So, you got to beat FC Dallas, though. You got to beat FC Dallas. And, one thing I will say, there's been a lot of negativity flying around, but Seattle does have an elite defense. I think it's fair to say that. Despite the goal concessions in San Jose, they conceded a penalty, and then Traco. I mean, that's just, that was such a sick goal. Honestly,
yeah, no, that was insane.
Off a corner kick volley. It looked like the Jimmy Madranda goal from the Timbers game in the 6-2 game.
Yeah,
but he was further out than Jimmy, and he just caught it perfectly. So you can't really fault anyone for that one. The penalty, Yamar shouldn't have made that challenge, but.
What are you going to do?
Yamar's having a good year.
I was going to say, yeah.
I wouldn't really.
I'll trade that penalty all day for the year he's having.
Yeah, I'm not. As long as he's not doing that regularly, I'm not going to be overly harping on him for that penalty. They didn't lose the game because of that penalty. They lost the game because they couldn't score.
And he won the game literally last
and he scored the game winner in the Vancouver game. So I think when you Seattle statistically has an elite defense, and when you have an elite defense, that's always going to give you a chance in most games. That can take you pretty far, honestly. You got to be able to score goals too, but it's good that they have an elite defense, and that can keep you competitive in games when you can't score goals. And I think we've seen that. That's why Seattle has been able to take the results that they've been able to take, is they've been able to grind out 1-0 and 0-0. So I hope they can start taking wins where they are also scoring goals consistently and generating chances and scoring goals from open play. And when it's 11 on 11, that's what they got to start doing. So I don't know. You got anything else on FC Dallas? Or
used to live there. First team I ever covered as a kid. So always a fun matchup for me. But please take 3 points.
Score some goals, man.
Score some goals.
Score some goals from the run of play when it's 11 on 11. You're not going to get a red card every game.
No.
And you're not going to be dominant on set pieces every game. I mean, that's kind of the thing. If it's the same lineup that they've been putting out, I don't really see why it would be. I'm not going to believe in a breakout with that personnel until I see it. So you basically got to dominate on set pieces like they did in Vancouver. So if you can do that, you can probably score 2 or 3 goals. But outside of that, I think you just got to hope that Christian comes on at some point and cooks, and the offense looks like it looks when he's played this year, which has been really good. So that's kind of how I see it. A couple other quick hitters results from around the league, I guess. Let's look at these. What was notable? We talked about hungover LAFC not looking that hungover. They really bammed on St. Louis City
No,
SC.
that's what I want to know. Are St. Louis City SC fraudulent?
I don't know if they're fraudulent, but I don't think they are as good as their record in their GD.
Yeah.
I don't think they're that good.
Because their away record's not very good, is it?
No, it is good.
Oh, it is
they
good.
Have five. They have 5 wins and 2 draws on the road.
Okay, that is very good.
That aspect. There, when you look at the record and the points per game and the goal differential, none of it looks fraudulent. So but eye test wise, I still am like, dude, really?
But they solved MLS, I thought.
Apparently, that take might have actually been a good take. I don't know if I believe in it still. I don't know. But they keep doing it, they keep doing it. They got bammed on against LAFC. And so and they got bammed on by Seattle earlier this season. And so those results still pop up for them where you're like, maybe this is fraudulent. But I mean, they can just as easily be like, check the scoreboard, check the record. We're in first place. We're averaging 1.7 points per game. No one else in the West is doing that. LAFC ain't doing that. Seattle ain't doing that. LAFC and Seattle don't have a plus 13 goal differential.
True.
So, I mean, fair enough.
Fair enough.
If their fans say that, I can't really argue with that.
Yeah.
But I am waiting for the shoe to drop on that because, you see a performance like the one that they had against LAFC where they got bammed on pretty good, and you're like, okay, are you really that good? I think it's a fair question you're asking.
I think it's interesting because looking at LAFC and looking at St. Louis City, I'm not scared of either of those two teams. Like the Sounders, I feel like if they pick it up, figure it all out, get Christian back, get Jordan back, keep them back, dude, they could easily launch and hold first.
In a theoretical playoff game against either of those two teams, they could play either of them straight up.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about that at full strength. It would be a good game. It'd be competitive, but I don't think that it's a situation where I'd be like, oh, Seattle's going to get blown out, even on the road,
Yeah.
Seattle's shown historically that in big playoff games like that, even when they have to go on the road, they can win. So, assuming that getting all their personnel back does fix the offense, I would like their chances in a theoretical playoff matchup against either of those teams, even if LAFC stops being hungover, which, I'm not ready to say that they're not hungover off one game. At this point, they have a 7 or 8 game sample size since CCL of being hungover and one game where they're not hungover.
And like you said, it wasn't like the scoreline was a indicator of the game as a whole.
Exactly. It was 0-0 until the 72nd minute.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready to call them fully unhungover yet. They might be. They looked really good and scored some nice goals after that 70th minute. So it's definitely possible that the fun that we've had tracking the LAFC hangover has come to an end, but I'm not ready to call that just yet. Let's see. There wasn't really that many other results that jumped out to me. Minnesota United bammed on Houston 3-0 on the road. Timo Pukki scored a goal for Minnesota United. That's a big signing for them. He's the leading all-time goal scorer for Finland, and he's already banging in goals. And Emmanuel Reynoso, who's one of the best assist guys in the league, assisted on that goal. So Minnesota United might be cooking a little bit if they can get Pukki going. I actually wrote an article for MLS off of Pukki's intro press conference, kind of breaking down that signing. So go check that out on MLSsoccer.com if you want to learn more about him. Real Salt Lake had a good result. They went down 2-0 to Sporting KC on the road and then came back and tied it. There was some controversy. Peter Vermees and the Sporting KC fan base weren't happy because they felt like Anderson Julio fouled their guy to get the ball off him and get a breakaway goal to tie that. It was a 50-50 call. I don't know. I just watched it once and I didn't really know if it was a foul. So I don't really know what they were on about with that. But other than that, I would say, I guess the Philly-Nashville game kind of popped off. I don't know if you saw all that. But Julian Carranza and Shaq Moore got double red cards in that game. They had a little fracas. They had a fracas.
There was
a fracas in that game. I don't think Jim Curtin and Gary Smith were both pissed that the double yellows came out, and I agree. It was a fracas for sure. There was like a tackle involved. They like went to ground, I think, and they were going at it. But Jim Curtin was saying like, dude, that should have been a yellow. Move on with it. I don't really know why there's double reds. Gary Smith agreed. I kind of agree too. I don't really know why they got sent off. But either way, Daniel Gazdag scored 2 penalty kicks for Philadelphia, and they won 2-0. And that was a classic funny game where one team is kind of dominating on offense and the other's just absorbing pressure, and the one who's absorbing pressure ends up winning. Nashville SC, I'm actually going to look it up. They racked up hella XG in this game and just couldn't score. So frustrating game for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The XG in this game was 2.2 to 1.8. Both these teams were firing. 2.2 XG and you don't score any goals is that's tough. Seattle did that against San Jose earlier this year, but that's a frustrating one for Nashville SC. 2.2 to 1.8. That's lit.
18 shots.
Yeah,
is tough.
Yeah, so that was probably the most entertaining game of this slate. But I think that was pretty much it as far as results go. There was one big trade this week. The New England Revolution traded Latif Blessing to Toronto FC in exchange for Mark Anthony Kaye. So that's a swap of 2 pretty big name midfielders in MLS. Both of those guys have been around a lot and have been really high level players. Latif Blessing was a really good player for LAFC for those early glory years that they had. He goes to Toronto. Mark Anthony Kaye has also they both were really good players for LAFC actually.
Yeah,
both of them. Mark Anthony Kaye has bounced around quite a bit since then. He was on the Rapids for a minute. He went to Toronto, and now he's going to New England. I think it's a good swoop for New England, but I don't know. I kind of see these players as pretty similar in value. So I feel like it was probably like salary cap type of stuff that led to this. Like they're slightly different in terms of skill set, but in terms of like value and what they bring to a team, Latif Blessing and Mark Anthony Kaye, I actually kind of view that as kind of just bang similar.
Yeah,
in what they bring.
It's an interesting trade.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know realistically like how much of a different level you're getting putting Mark Anthony Kaye on the Revs compared to Latif Blessing.
Latif was just like, get me out of this hell of a locker room
for the Revs.
Oh, I guess he was on the Revs. Who went to Toronto?
Latif Blessing went to Toronto, and Mark Anthony.
He said,
Kaye
"Get me
went
the hell into this locker room."
Well,
he said, "I want to be with Bernadeschi, dude." He's like, "I love vaping."
Something that's funny with Toronto FC is we talked about the whole Atlanta United Franco Ibarra debacle, and he was openly talking about like, I don't want to go to the last place team. I'm pissed off that Atlanta is loaning me to this team. Like, I don't want to play there. And I'm like, dude, like, you got to go play with these guys. Like, and Franco Ibarra put out a statement. He was like, I did not mean to disparage my new team. I apologize. I was speaking in the heat of the moment. And I was like, okay, yeah, there it is. Like, you got to go play for him. You got to go play for him. You can't just come in blazing hot talking about how much the team you play for sucks. It does. But, you got to go play for him now. So he did, I think, probably to,
he had to extinguish the fire.
He had to put that fire out. But so Toronto FC now have Franco Ibarra and Latif Blessing. So, I mean,
they're heating up.
That's guys who can help them, but I don't really know realistically how much that moves the needle. Maybe it'll help Toronto. Maybe. But, the Revs have been good this year, and Mark Anthony Kaye is a good player. He's an above average MLS midfielder. So I think he probably slots in there, and they maintain a similar level. I don't think it like puts them over the top as juggernaut or anything, but fine trade. It was anytime you get a trade that involves actual players, that's a novelty in MLS. It's not like Gam for Tam in an international roster spot. Like you had actual movement cooking on this one.
Yeah.
So
A fun little trade.
Fun little MLS trade. I think that's about it.
Oh no.
Oh,
You forgot the most important one, Ari.
what did I miss?
Messi buying every cereal possible in a Publix.
Messi went to Publix, which I don't. Is that like a Miami thing?
It's a Florida,
Okay.
like that general region
So
grocery
Messi
store.
went to the grocery store, and there was some good content about that. I saw that. There were some tweets that were a little over the top in terms of the deeper meaning behind Messi's trip to the grocery
They
store.
were like, this
But-
means everything to him. He can shop at the grocery store. He's probably never been able to do this.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie though. I was enjoying the content of Messi just out at the grocery store. He was taking selfies with people, and people were getting pictures of him. So that was fun.
They put up a mural of him. I mean, it's happening, folks.
He's there. He's in market.
Yeah.
He's gonna start playing soccer in MLS soon, and he goes to the grocery store when he needs groceries.
Yeah.
So
he's just like you and me.
He's just a normal guy hanging out at the grocery store.
Just wait till he finds out about DoorDash.
He's probably not going to be going to the grocery store anymore. If he has to take a selfie every 10 feet. But, credit to Messi for going out and indulging the people and giving them those selfies.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I feel like even though he wasn't like mobbed, he was still able to
I didn't
shop.
see any videos. I saw pictures. But yeah, people were letting him shop, which that's good. Let him shop. If you want to ask him for a selfie, that's fine. But... don't mob the guy.
Yeah, let him
buy
shop.
his Ritz crackers and cereal.
Yeah.
He's just trying to live
He's
his
just
life.
like us.
He's just
folks.
like you and me, normal
He's
guy.
probably getting overstimulated at the grocery store just like me.
Yeah. So yeah, that was good content. Unless you had anything else, I was going to call it a wrap right there.
Let's wrap
for
it up,
episode
dude.
12. Let's wrap it up. I'm going to be out of town this weekend. I'm going to a bachelor party. I'm going to miss the game, but don't worry, I'll catch up on the highlights. I might rewatch the full thing if it's worth. Okay, how about this? If it's worth rewatching,
Multi-goal game.
If the Seattle Sounders score multiple goals in this game, I will rewatch it. I will rewatch the entire game front to back. If they don't score multiple goals, I'm going to only watch the highlights, and then I'm going to fire all my takes on the next reaction podcast based off highlights and not on the full game. And so they're going to be really uninformed and bad takes. And
that's what I do every day, Ari.
Yeah, so that's my condition. If you want me to throw down actual informed takes, score multiple goals.
Correct.
You got to have the team score multiple goals. So, but I trust everyone to keep me updated on what's going on. Noah, if A-Bear scores a goal, I trust that you will blow up the group chat and take your L.
Yes.
So, keep me posted. I don't know if I want to be fully in the dark, but I'm pretty much considering just not watching it all. But anyway, we're going to call it right there. Thank you, everyone, as always, for listening. We continue to put up numbers, downloads-wise, that drastically exceed my expectations. So I love that. I love all of you. I appreciate you for listening. Like, subscribe, rate 5 stars, write us a review on iTunes. That we got a few the last time I asked for that, and then we haven't gotten an iTunes review am I talking about iTunes? Apple?
I think it's the same thing,
Okay,
right?
Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts.
Someone out there listening, go write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and get that up. But either way, you all continue to tune in and
we appreciate
allow
it.
us to put up those numbers. So we really appreciate it.
Share with Messi in a Publix.
Yeah. If you see Messi at Publix, tell him to listen to Lobbing Scorchers.
Yeah. We'll get him on.
But anyway, yeah. Thank you all for the support. Really appreciate it. If you have questions or takes about the show, you can always hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter will be in the description. But thank you as always for the support, and we'll see you next time. Until then, we out.
Peace.